Welcome back to the Transporter CFB podcast YouTube channel presented by NoContextCFB. We're here with our weekly off-season podcast episode coming to you every Wednesday as we look forward to the 2023 season. My name is Gillam, and joining me today we have Mark Thomas. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Another rep, another pod, baby. Glad to be back.
There we go. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of some hot topics, position use. A lot of schools lay claim to which positions they are strongest and produce the NFL talent year in and year out. So really going to delve into that today and see who we kind of think is worthy of those titles. But first, just a few notes to get things started off. As we recently announced, coming up on July 5th, the first ever edition of the Transfer Portal CFB Preview Magazine will be available. It'll be sold for $9.99 with loads of content inside. We'll have a bunch of player-focused articles, in-depth previews for all FBS conferences and teams, 10 feature articles as well on stories across college football, and then some classic content like Heisman watch lists, All-America teams, bowl projections, etc. I know for me personally, I've got a feature story coming out about a Missouri running back here in town, and then also doing a piece on just the transitioning of FCS from FCS level to FBS. So a lot of really interesting stuff in there, a lot of great interviews. So yeah, don't miss it. On sale July 5th, $9.99 to download. And then don't forget to give us a like and subscribe here on the YouTube, leave a comment or a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You can find those down all in the description. And just thank you guys for your support as we continue to grow our team and grow our content and kind of get into the magazine and stuff. But so with that being said, let's get into kind of what we're focusing on today. Started off with one of the big ones, of course, QBU, who lays claim today. You got a couple of strong contenders with USC, Oklahoma, Ohio State, even NC State you throw in there. So Mark, just off rip, kind of, who do you have there?
As far as recent bias, I'm going to go down there, Dabo land, to talk about the Clemson quarterbacks. I know there's a lot of scrutiny going on with Dabo and quote unquote not developing quarterbacks because he's had generational talent after generational talent, such as we can start off with Taj Boyd. Then you go from Taj to Deshaun Watson. Then you go from Deshaun to Trevor Lawrence. Like that's just I don't know how lucky a quarterback like that. You were like only USC gets that lucky back in the day, but any other team like within recent history, I don't think has come to claim that stake like Clemson. And they both won national titles. Deshaun and Trevor Lawrence. So I definitely think Clemson deserves some submission in that claim for QBU.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree, and I like how you mentioned Taj. Taj is another guy that, not enough people talk about him.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think I agree with
it.
Yeah, it's with Trevor Lawrence recently and kind of how he does national titles. They've had all the college success that you can hope to have for Trevor coming in that first season, especially. And yeah, the point with Dabo about his quarterback development, I think that's kind of the biggest knock, especially with what happened with DJ recently. So I feel like how Cade ends up panning out is going to be really big, and kind of how Dabo's seen as a quarterback coach for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I would throw another team out there. Not a big school, but North Dakota State. I think North Dakota State is definitely has a state to claim name in there. With QBU, I honestly think like when you talk about a quarterback that started off under Craig Bowl, like Brock Jensen, he started off by one of those national titles, and you go from Brock to Eastern State, from Eastern State to Carson Wentz, from Wentz to State, then from State to Trey Lance. I think that's at the small school level, that's very impressive. Not a lot of schools at the FCS level get quarterback play like that, true quarterback development. Craig Bowl does a phenomenal job. I don't know how he does it, but he just sees talent in these lower level kids coming out of high school. He just does a great job of just tapping into whatever makes them great and brings that to the offense, and they just flourish in that offense. Something about that North Dakota State program, it just even though Craig's gone, they still do a great job of still having great quarterback play.
Yeah, and it seems like, they don't, year in and year out, they aren't putting up the craziest numbers, but the NFL likes them because North Dakota State plays a very pro style system, but it's just the film that they put on tape. I mean, scouts love. I mean, Wentz and Lance especially, the Easton Stick as well when he was coming out. But yeah, I mean, it's just they kind of raise pro quarterbacks over there. So yeah, I think that's another really good one. And yeah, I mean, we haven't touched on a lot of the favorites. I mean, USC's obviously got their run of more on the college success side, I would say, similarly to Oklahoma. We'll still see how some of their guys like Baker Mayfield and Kyler pan out in the NFL, but definitely more two programs that are more kind of on the college side of that. And then you kind of got the opposite of that with NC State, where I mean, Rivers, Russell Wilson, Glennon, they all had college success, but they almost had more NFL success potentially. So it's kind of yeah, it depends on kind of how you look at it because NC State's another one that has it was at one time they had like four. There was one time where Mike Glennon was starting. I think they had four starting quarterbacks in the NFL one weekend recently, which was just crazy.
I definitely agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I guess if we can go and move on to the running backs, which is another really difficult one that I go back and forth on a lot. For me, it comes down to Georgia, Wisconsin, Bama. But what are your thoughts?
Um, I mean, I would also say that too. And you can take a look at LSU and the success that they've had down there from like Kevin Falk all the way to Leonard Fournette, even to like Darius Guice and Pius Harry Lair. I think like whatever they do down there in that part of the country is especially with athletes, especially at the running back position. I think it's just one of them, like they just do a great job of just development those running backs down there. And also with that having good offensive line play, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But I think it's just something about a LSU running back, like especially when we talk about a guy like Leonard Fournette at his stature, like he was a special talent coming out of high school. And for him to just go to LSU and just be like the same as that person, like the same as that player, I think that just a testament to the coaching down in LSU.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they've always got. I mean, they're always productive, and they're always. It seems like they're always just crazy tough to take down, which is kind of needed in the SEC. But LSU's kind of they always have the best of those. Fournette kind of being that primary example. I mean, yeah, for me, LSU's another strong contender. I mean, Georgia and Wisconsin have the pedigree every single season. It seems like they got 1,000-yard back. But I mean, yeah, if you look more historically, I mean, you look at Miami with the years. I mean, Frank Gore, Willis McGahee, Clint Portis, just to name a few. I mean, they've probably had some of the more on the NFL success side. And we'll see. I mean, Oklahoma is another name you look at with Adrian. I mean, Adrian Peterson kind of obviously headlining, but you got DeMarco Murray in recent memory as well. And then Ohio State. We'll see how Zeke kind of ends up panning out with his career with what's all going on with him in free agency and such. But yeah, I mean, all strong contenders. I think I'll give it to Georgia all time because you've got the historical aspect of having had Herschel and just one of the goats of that position. And then the recent history has been NFL 1,000-yard backs year in and year out. And most of them generally have panned out well in the NFL too. So that's why. But I mean, it's tough to beat Monte Ball, James White, all those Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor. List goes on at Wisconsin just from the college level. So yeah, I think it's very close at the top there for RBU. But yeah, so what's your final pick then, Mark? There.
I'm gonna take it back to Big Ten. I'm gonna give it to Ohio State. I think just the lure of talent they've had. We're talking about from just the college level in general. We're talking about a two-time Heisman runner, Archie Griffin, to Eddie George, to Beanie Wells, to obviously Zeke Elliott, and then you got J.K. Dobbins, and then now potentially I think Trey Henderson can be one of those type guys. Yeah, man, Ohio State just does a great job. I don't know like what it is about like just the allure of a Ohio State running back. But they just like told the rock as well as you can, especially in this part of the country in the Midwest, where I'm at. Like you have to be able to run the ball, rain, sleet, or snow. Like you got to be able to do it, and they're one of the best to ever do it on a collegiate level. Obviously, with some NFL success for sure. I mean, you can't doubt Eddie George is probably the best back. I would say when you talk about from an overall career standpoint. I think Zeke could have had it. I think Zeke got some down years with the Cowboys the last few years. But other than that, I mean, they've had, I mean, the track record speaks for itself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you've also got a lot of really high quality offensive lines. Those running backs are running behind at Ohio State, which helps as well. But yeah, moving on and kind of, I mean, on the same Ohio State notes, wide receiver U, which in recent years with just how recruiting has trended and the players they have being picked, I mean, Ohio State for me is a fair shoe-in at this point for this award. But there's a lot of debate with LSU, Bama also having their names in the mix as well. So what are your thoughts on that argument?
Yeah, obviously, wide receiver U. I mean, it started under at, at Ohio State hashtag Zone Six. It started with I think Coach Zach Smith when he was under there with Urban Meyer. And then he just obviously whatever happened once he left. Brian Harlan just continued the trend, and you saw the sure development from Mike Thomas to Noah Brown to uh, Devin Allen to all these guys that have come through. Now you got the new breed with Get Wilson, Chris Olave, now Marvin Harrison Jr. Uh, with all these guys that's come in through that program. I mean, you can't knock it, but I think I'm going to take Bama in this one. I think Bama will be my overall just because the sure talent that Nick Saban has had come through that program starting out from his first year with Julio Jones. Then you go from Julio to Amari Cooper. You got all these guys that have come through this program. Like, I mean, we could go. It's a long list, long list. Just the sheer development that they do at the receiver position. You would think it's because Nick is even though like when Nick got there was more of like a run or rock type of team, 3 yards of cloud of dust. Like they still had big play receivers to make plays whenever they needed to. And Chris route runners can run after the catch, can get yak. Like they do a great job down there. So I'm going to take Alabama in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's kind of Bama, you mentioned the route running. I think one of the biggest things a lot of scouts say that they look at it receivers coming out of college is their ability, how crisp is their route running, can it translate to the next level? And you look at guys like, obviously Julio, but Amari Cooper was another great example of that. And Calvin Ridley too, another especially of just great route runners can create separation for themselves and they've got enough athleticism to work off of that. So yeah, I would honestly agree with you. I mean, I think LSU's close. I think Ohio State is probably on its way to getting there. I think you saw with the rookie seasons Olave and Garrett Wilson had especially that they're on their way to, I mean, potentially being some pretty solid NFL wide receivers in the future. Knock on wood. So yeah, I think Ohio State. You look at just, I mean, the way they're recruiting right now. You have 3 of the top 10 receivers in the class of 2023 committing to Ohio State. It's the destination to go to now for a lot of kids. I mean, you've already got the number 2 guy in the class of 2024, and it's just if you're a 5-star wide receiver, Ohio State's reaching out to you, and you're more than likely giving them a pretty serious look just because of the track record recently. So I could see them overtaking that title, but yeah, in terms of translating NFL talent, I think Bama's definitely got them beat. But yeah, so really quick, we'll touch on just kind of a couple smaller ones. First off, tight end U, which has actually become a fairly heated debate recently. Notre Dame has kind of been always towards the top of that, producing great tight ends. Mike McGlinchey being the most recent, or excuse me, Michael Meyer. But then I mean, Iowa's always been consistent in producing tight ends. I mean, you had TJ Hawkinson, Noah Gray there at the same time, which was incredible. And I mean, just another kind of team that with their style of offense uses them a lot. They don't score a lot of points in that style of offense, but they use the tight end a lot in that style of offense. But yeah, so I mean, just kind of some quick thoughts on that. You've also got, I mean, Georgia recently has made a big claim for it, Penn State too, with Fryermuth and others.
Yeah. No, I'm going to take a big to the country. I'm definitely going to take Iowa in this one. I think over the course of time, obviously they're not the spread offense of modern football. They are the cloud of dust, but they also use the tight end. Kind of one dimensional, but you also see they also do a great job of having the tight ends flash their athletic abilities in certain situations. You could go back to even like Dallas Clark, for instance, like all pro tight end, elite college tight end. I had a solid career, an elite college football career and an NFL career all time. So and then you just go back from that to up until now. You got George Kittle dominating the league. Like it's just it speaks for itself. Like they're not like when you a tight end getting recruited by Iowa, like you're not gonna get the ball a lot. You're not gonna score a lot. You're gonna block, you're gonna get down, you're gonna get down to 3-point stance, zone right, zone left. block your ass off, and then try to man make plays in the basket game whenever you can. But if the athleticism there, you're going to get drafted. I promise you.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like yeah, they put on a very complete film package for scouts. I feel like with how much they do block and then also kind of splash that ability outside. But yeah, I think I'd take Iowa as well. I think if we're looking all time though, historically, Miami probably takes the cake just because you're
Oh
talking
yeah,
with NFL success. Greg Olson, Jimmy Graham, you got Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow. I mean, those are just I mean, they're all big names, all Pro Bowlers.
yeah.
So I think Miami probably all time, even though it hasn't necessarily been there recently. Outside of you
Right.
got David Njoku who kind of made a splash for a little bit there, but yeah, they're definitely another one worth looking at for sure. But, but yeah, I guess well we can also move on kind of on a similar note with offensive line. Another one that's kind of under the radar, but you've got I think Notre Dame, Wisconsin are very strong at the top of that just with the culture they have around their offensive lines and kind of how they develop guys over the years and I mean, just churn guys into the NFL essentially. But I mean, you also look at Bama and Georgia, especially as of late, are also pretty big on that front. So yeah, who you got down in the trenches?
I want to take Bama in this one. I think the when you talk about the talent that they bring in, the talent that they develop over years past, I think it speaks for itself. Even this year's draft, I think you're going to have two potentially top 120 guys in Tyler Steen and Emil Cool Jr. I think they just do a great job of being able to change the offense around to where they're able to zone block and show their athleticism. They're able to a lot of pin and pull scheme. They're able to show their athleticism and that and ability to move feet on contact, not just pull and then hit them and then just be and just stalemate. Like I think those guys do a great job of running their feet, playing bully ball, pass protecting with sure violence, and obviously keeping the quarterback upright.
Yeah, yeah, I think, and with Alabama, you get a lot of. It's a little bit different than Notre Dame, Wisconsin, because the offense is at least recently a lot more balanced too. So you get a lot more kind of diversity. Whereas a Wisconsin offensive lineman is very much so just kind of a mauler in the run game, and you're not asking them to do too much in pass protection, frankly. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good point just on kind of the roles that they're filling. Um, I'll probably take Notre Dame. While they don't have necessarily the big names all time in the NFL, they have just so many guys that they put in there. You look at guys like Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson right now, Mike McGlinchey, another one. I mean they've just got some of the biggest names in the offensive line world right now, and I think it's hard to go against them. And it's every season. It seems like at this point with them, they're kind of similar to how I was looking at that, Ohio State might take over that wide receiver U. I think Notre Dame will just purely based on what they're doing and continuing to kind of do on that front. But yeah, flipping the other side of scrimmage, the guys going up against them, defensive line, another one that's talked about frequently. You've got I mean, there's so many great options for this one. It's very hard to pick a wrong one. I mean, Ohio State's put out so many great pass rushers. Clemson in recent years has been I mean, there were years where they had four NFL, top 2 round picks on their line. But I mean, obviously Bama and Georgia are right up there as well. So who you got in the defensive line front?
From an overall standpoint, I'm just gonna stick with Trent Shoe, Alabama here. I mean the NFL contract speaks for itself. Redskins drafted I can Mathis. I can't pronounce his first name, but they drafted Mathis in the
Oh
second
yeah.
round, and folks thought he was a fourth round pick. Like that's just a testament to like when a defensive lineman is coached by Alabama, whoever I don't care if it's Car Dunbar, Bo Davis, I don't care who you put down there. If Nick Saban hires you as a defensive line coach, like you're expected to develop these kids to be draft picks. Like I think like it's just the the talent that they have down there just speaks for itself. Like I mean, they're as an elite group of guys, and they're coached very well. Especially when you're talking about a 3-4 and be able to two gap as great as they do. Like it does not matter. Like the standard does not change, and it has, and it never will change as long as Nick Saban is there. I just think it just speaks for itself. Like I think kind of like probably $500 million worth of contracts in like the last 10 years. So I mean, from Marcel Darius, now you got Deron Payne, John Allen. And we can just name names, man.
Yeah,
It's amazing what they do down there in Tuscaloosa with those linemen. Man, I respect it to the full. They play the game the right way.
yeah. Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, it's just kind of that Alabama pedigree at this point where they just got, no matter what, if you're getting a junior or senior coming from Alabama, the offensive defensive line position, they've been trained the right way. They're NFL ready pretty much in all facets. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned John Allen. I mean, I thought he was one of the more just for what he did in college and how dominant he was. I did not think he was respected or talked about nearly enough as he should, and you're kind of seeing that come to fruition in the NFL a little bit. So yeah, I can see that. I think Clemson's probably the only other one that has a very strong claim. I mean, Ohio State's got the Bosa brothers, which helps them a little bit, but I mean, the depth of what Clemson has put out recently, but historically they probably aren't up there. And also, I mean, unless I'm mistaken, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the Clemson guys that were drafted out of that class, I know, I mean, Christian Wilkins still plays significant snaps. I know that, but I don't think that the rest of them have panned out like Dexter Alexander, Cleveland Farrell, some of those guys. I don't think they've panned out as well as some of these Bama guys, which potentially plays
I,
another factor.
I would think Dexter Lawrence is coming to his own now. I would think
Mm,
Brian Daboll, like they're doing good things up there in New York with him. Like he's starting to flash a little bit. He's trying now I won't say Christian Wilkins level, but he's definitely trying to get some respect in the league. But Clinton
mm,
Fair, I don't know what happened.
yeah. They
Yeah,
reached far up. Yeah,
yeah.
that was. I mean, it was a risk, but it definitely did not pan out. But hey, typical Raiders. Not the best draft picks in the world, but hey. But yeah, anyways, moving on that front seven. One that's not talked about a lot, honestly, probably out of a lot of these position groups, but linebacker you. Um, I'm personally I'm a huge fan of Georgia in this category just because, and I mean recency bias, but just the dudes that they're putting out every single year are just incredible. I mean, Roquan Smith obviously stands out the most just when watching him on the field in college, he looked like an NFL linebacker already. But I mean, every season now they just have, I mean, freaks of nature that are hybrid pass rushers off the end that can also drop into coverage. And it's just, I think they're at a different level than probably most other programs right now. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Mark?
it's tough to say. And we can talk about a plethora of teams. I mean, if we go off the past, like it just depends on what we're going on. If we're going off recency bias, I think Georgia probably has it. Just because like if you look at like how they play in the past couple of years, like when the Kobe Dean and those guys, like the way they just fly to the football. Like I mean, I think they play the game like how it's supposed to look like. When you talk about clinic tape, teach tape, I think they play the linebacker position like that. But they're a group of guys that just get after the ball. They're nasty. They hold each other accountable. Like I think those are guys that you would want as leaders on your defense. We talk about LBU. So I think those are a few. But if you're talking about historically, I think I'm gonna take Miami in this one. I think we can go from Ray Lewis to John Beeson, DJ Williams, Nate Webster. I just got
Jonathan
Jesse
Vilma, yeah.
Armstead, Jonathan Vilma. Yeah, I think historically they just they have it. They had great college careers, but they've also had like elite NFL careers at the same time. So and not a lot of programs can say that from an overall historical standpoint. So I'm definitely gonna take Miami in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of from the more historical side of it, I think Miami's probably up there. I think USC is probably the only other one that can make a claim to that, just with kind of the
Mhm.
depth that they have. I mean, Clay Matthews and Brian Cushing, kind of the most notable, but there's a lot of others in there that there's some all time greats too. So but linebacker is a really interesting one. I think Micah Parsons is putting Penn State now towards the top. Penn State was already kind of up there, but Micah Parsons might change kind of how they're perceived as well in this. So it is interesting to see kind of how the position used kind of change over time. I mean, it can on a yearly basis, if a program has a couple of rookies start to go off, everybody is looking at. I mean, for instance, Ohio State now, people are like, oh, Ohio State's well on track to being wide receiver you with kind of how their guys are doing. So it's definitely a very fluid thing, and it's also just an argument between eras, which is in any sports conversation gets people really upset with I don't know, it's almost like Jordan LeBron debate is classifies in that as well. So yeah, it's hard to compare
Right.
eras, but yeah, historically versus recent. But yeah, now for the big one. Probably, I mean, in my eyes, probably the one that's talked about the most. Just, I mean, I look at that 2019 LSU Texas game as when Texas was coming out in the field with the shirts saying they were DBU, talking all this to
Good
LSU, and then
God.
Joe Burrow put 450 and 4 touchdowns on them. So yeah, I mean, what are we looking at there? I mean, Ohio State, LSU, Florida, strong contenders. Bama, Georgia, you could also make an argument for, but yeah, I'll let you start with this one because it's a tough one.
I think I'm gonna start with the Silver Rabbit up there, Kerry Combs up there. I mean, he's not at Ohio State, but he coaches corners very well. Obviously, he has several first round picks: Marshawn Lattimore, Gary Conley, Brad Roby. There's a award. Like, I mean, those are guys. When you talk about recency bias, especially, like, I think you don't get no better than Ohio State. I mean, I know LSU has had its runs, and still are going to continue to have their runs. With like Derek Stingley. But I think Ohio State makes a great claim for DBU just because, like, I mean, when you talk about multiple first round corners within the span of like 5 years, I think not a lot of teams can say that. And like they play, I mean, their defenses have always been elite at Ohio State. They've always carried the back end as good as you can. They call it the silver bullet defense for a reason, and those guys played up to the standard that Ohio State set. So, I mean, like a time like this at war, like you can't knock that. Like he's truly developed. Like these guys were like really developed into becoming the first round picks that they become. So I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm gonna take Ohio State in this one.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think Ohio State is probably my pick, just from both the college talent that they have and how it translates to the NFL. They've got it both figured out. So yeah, I agree with you there. I think a couple other names. I think Bama in terms of the NFL talent. We were talking earlier about how you trust a lot of their players going to the league because they always just seem so NFL ready in all aspects. And I think that's exactly what you got with recently Landon Collins, Eddie Jackson, Marlon Humphrey, Minka Fitzpatrick. Even I think you're just those guys have shown that there's now a new standard. The same standard at the defensive line in Alabama is now coming into the secondary because historically they just don't have that depth. That probably puts them to the top. But another name I wanted to throw out that's really interesting and wanted to hear your thoughts on is Florida State, because you've got Prime Time, who many would obviously argue is the greatest of all time at what he did, and Jalen Ramsey recently as well. So yeah, Antonio Cromartie, Xavier Rhodes, Derwin James, I can't forget. Yeah, I'm a
Jerome
Chargers fan,
Buckley, yeah.
but yeah. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on Florida State kind of in that mix? How much does the Deion Sanders moniker, I guess, kind of carry them in this argument?
Yeah. I mean, it holds a lot of weight. It definitely holds a lot of weight for sure. And then also, you got to think, he also played alongside Terrell Buckley, who was also a top 5 pick the year after Deion got drafted.
Mm,
So, I mean, they definitely, I would say historically, I think they definitely take it. But if you want to go recency, I'm not really sure on that. But as far as like an overall, yes, they definitely have a state to claim in that um in the DBU.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Well then just to kind of wrap it up, let's go overall then. It kind of puts you on the spot here. Let's go with offense you and defense you. Who lays claim to both sides of the ball? You kind of all positions across. I'll go ahead and start and just lay mine out. Um I'll go with Oklahoma as offense you, because I think they've had across all positions, they've got the NFL talent. Um Defensively, I think you're gonna have to go. I'm gonna go with Alabama just because I think they also are. They're in the top 5 for pretty much every position. But yeah, what are your final picks?
Offense, you that's tough. There's a few schools I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this this gonna throw somebody off, but I'm gonna say Oregon.
Ooh,
Overall, offensively,
I
I
like it.
think when you look at then like a quarter. First of all, a quarterback's gonna be Dennis Dixon. Dennis Dixon he's gonna lead the offense.
Yeah.
You got like Michael James, Kenyon Barner, all these great all these great backs that have come through Oregon. Then the offensive line play has always been stellar. Like you can't knock that. The receiver play, it may be a little shaky. We talk about overall, but I think I'm definitely gonna take Oregon this one. Defensively, I'm gonna take Alabama. I just think the success that they've had of all time, especially when you talk about even like the earlier days under Gene Stallings, when they had those two defensive ends, I cannot think of their names. I think one was Eddie Long. Yeah, Eddie Long, star defensive end. He was like probably like just Javon Curse almost before Javon Curse. He played like he was really good. Like you talk about all these guys overall historically. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take Bama defensively of all time.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, as one of our resident Oregon fans, I'll definitely take that answer. I mean, their offense was kind of what their offense was half of kind of what got me into football so much. You know, they were so
Yeah,
entertaining, so new, scoring so many points in those early 2010s. As a kid, I was like, oh man, they're fun to watch. It's better than watching Bama beat someone, 24-10 back when they were running with Mark Ingram and McElroy. But but
yeah.
yeah, but yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that about wraps up kind of the position you episode. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Once again, if you like the show, give us a like, subscribe, follow, 5-star review, all that great stuff. And also leave a comment below or on Twitter. We would definitely love to hear from you guys and kind of y'all's, give us your picks on kind of these position you and give us your argument for why your team kind of deserves it. One last reminder: don't forget to look forward to the first ever Transfer Portal CFB preview magazine on sale July 5th, $9.99. It'll have tons of content about the 2023 season. Thank you, Mark, for joining me. And then kind of, do you have anything you'd like to kind of plug you're working on article wise or anything for the site?
Obviously, I'm doing some articles, team previews for the magazine. We just dropped not too long ago, Alabama, who I picked as an Alabama's star quarterback. It's a little series that I'm doing called The Case, making cases for each quarterback on the depth chart to see why they should be the starting quarterback for the program. Yesterday, I just dropped an article about women in college, coaching college football right now. Women who are not getting recognition, but they are doing the daily job. They are doing the grunt work. So definitely go check that article out.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I remember when we pitched that one. I thought that was a great idea. But yeah, I'm doing yeah, it's similar to what I said earlier, doing some stuff for the preview magazine, obviously, and then in a couple of weeks I'll have a piece out on kind of the four new teams in the Big 12 this year, and kind of just taking a look into deep dive into their schedule and kind of how we think they're going to pan out in their first seasons, and then also in the long run how they're looking. But yeah, thank you guys again for tuning in. This has been the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context CFB. And we'll be back again next Wednesday, as always, for our weekly off-season podcast. So looking forward to see you guys then.